This isn't a place for failures. That's what my mom told me straight up, 3 days before Thanksgiving, as if I were some outsider who didn't belong at our family's table. Why? Because my younger sister was bringing her boyfriend to meet everyone. And my job as a diesel mechanic, with my hands always smudged with oil, was apparently too working class for the occasion. He's from a wealthy family, Mom explained, and Lily wants everything to go smoothly. You get it, don't you? I just nodded. I didn't fight back. I didn't cry. I didn't mention the scarf I'd already picked out for Mom or the watch I'd bought for Dad. I didn't say I'd rearranged my work schedule to make it to dinner on time. I simply said, I get it. But 5 days later, they showed up at my doorstep frantic, after learning the truth about Lily's boyfriend and about me. I just finished a 12-hour shift at the garage, my hands still black with grease, when I decided to call Mom. I wanted to ask what time Thanksgiving dinner would start, whether I should bring my usual cornbread stuffing or maybe attempt Grandma's old whiskey walnut pie recipe. But the moment Mom answered, her voice was hesitant, careful, like she was treading on thin ice. "Aaron, sweetheart," she said slowly, "this year's a bit different." I stopped, one boot still halfway off in my hallway. "What do you mean?" I asked. There was a long silence, so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she went on, "Lily's bringing her boyfriend home for the first time. He's very accomplished, Harvard grad, works in finance, and she wants everything to be perfect." I didn't say anything. Mom paused, then landed the final hit. "She's worried your presence might seem out of place. You know, your job, your look." My look? She meant the plaid shirts, the messy bun, the hands that never seem clean no matter how much I scrub. "Lily just wants to make a good impression," she added quickly. "You understand, right?" I could have told her about the scarf I'd bought, soft cashmere from a small shop in Maine. I could have mentioned the watch I'd had engraved for Dad. Thanks for teaching me to fix anything. I could have reminded her that I'd paid Lily's rent for 3 months when she was jobless, no strings attached. But I didn't. Instead, I shut my eyes and said, "I get it." Then I hung up. I stood in the hallway of my small house for what felt like forever. The floor groaned under my weight. A cold draft slipped through the windows I hadn't sealed yet. Outside, snow began to fall softly. I walked to the kitchen, placed the wrapped gifts on the counter, and sat in silence. The phone didn't ring again. Thanksgiving morning came with a quiet layer of snow covering the rooftops and trucks outside. The world felt hushed, like it was pausing, but my house was quieter still. No sound of a game on TV, no smell of roasting turkey, no clinking of plates or debates about pie baking times. Just stillness. I stayed in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling. Around 9 a.m. I got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and made a simple breakfast, 2 eggs, some toast. The scarf for Mom sat in its gift bag on the kitchen table. I left it untouched. By noon, I grabbed my toolbox, drove across town, and pulled up at Mrs. Harper's place. She was a retired librarian I'd helped before, fixing her old pickup or her finicky furnace. A few days earlier, she'd left a message saying her garage door was jammed again. She opened the door in a heavy sweater, her face brightening like I was her only expected guest. "Working on Thanksgiving?" she asked softly. I shrugged. "Beats sitting around." She gave me a knowing smile and said, "Coffee's on the counter." Fixing her garage door took 45 minutes. I stayed a bit longer, though, hauling in firewood, replacing the batteries in her smoke alarms, listening as she talked about her late husband, who always carved the turkey with a little too much showmanship. Before I left, she handed me a slice of apple pie wrapped in foil, saying, "So you don't forget what home tastes like." Driving back that evening, I passed my parents' street. Their house was lit up, warm light spilling out. I could see shadows through the window, laughter, people holding drinks, the glow of a celebration. I didn't stop. Back home, I started a fire in my small wood stove, sank into a chair, and looked at Mrs. Harper's pie. It wasn't the one I grew up with. It didn't come with whipped cream or a noisy dining room. But it was warm, and it was enough. For the first time in years, I had no one to impress, no one to let down, just me and the quiet. And somehow I didn't feel alone. I felt free. I used to think something was wrong with me, like I'd missed some guidebook everyone else had on fitting in. Growing up, our house wasn't rich, but it was neat, proper, image-obsessed. Mom Ellen was the kind who starched tablecloths and served iced tea in matching glassware. Dad, Mark, worked in urban development, reserved but proud. And Lily, my little sister, was the star. Born with perfect curls, a dazzling smile, and a knack for the spotlight, ballet recitals, debate team, even a stint as the high school news anchor. She glided through life like it was scripted. Me. I was loud when I should have been soft, defiant when I should have nodded. While Lily went to prom in a sleek black limo, I was under my first car, swapping out spark plugs with a wrench in my hand. She studied communications in college, did a brief gig on local TV in Seattle, then came home when it didn't pan out. Still, to my parents, she shone. When I said I wanted to go to trade school to become a mechanic, Mom's face tightened like I'd announced I was running away to join a band. "Aaron, you're too bright for that," she said. "Why not something professional?" That word, professional, came up a lot. When I got my first job at a trucking yard, Dad didn't say, "Good job." He asked, "Is that safe for a woman?" No one visited the first shop I ran. No one asked about the certifications I earned or the engines I'd rebuilt from the ground up. But they replayed Lily's TV clips endlessly, shared her Instagram posts in the family chat with heart eyes emojis. I didn't hate her for it, not really. She fit the world they wanted to see. I didn't. Still, I tried. Every Mother's Day, I showed up with a bouquet of roses. I fixed Dad's car without him asking. When Lily's apartment got water damage and she couldn't pay rent, I sent her $1,500, no questions asked. Yet at the first hint of embarrassment, they shut me out. No discussion, no defense. Just, "She doesn't want you there." It didn't shatter me, but it confirmed something I'd known deep down for years. I was family by blood, not by belonging, so I stopped waiting for their approval. I started building my own life. People see the grease on my coveralls and think that's all there is to me. But there's more beneath the surface. It started when I was 22, in my second year at the yard, scraping by, wondering if this was it. One night, while rebuilding a transmission on a Peterbilt, the shop radio played a finance podcast, something about investments and passive income. I didn't get it, but it stuck with me. That weekend, I went to the library and checked out The Millionaire Next Door. I read it in 3 days. Then I read 4 more books. At 23, I opened a brokerage account with $800. I skipped buying new work boots that year to put $400 into an S&P 500 fund. The next month, I bought a single share of a trucking company I knew well. It felt like staking a claim in a world that overlooked me. The habit grew. I started waking up at 5 a.m. to read investment blogs before work. I tracked dividends, reinvested every cent. I took side gigs on weekends, not for fun, but to invest. I bought my house at 27, a fixer-upper with leaky pipes and a broken heater. I repaired it all myself. Every dollar I saved on plumbers went into my portfolio. I never bragged about it, not out of shame, but because I knew what would happen if the truth came out. It would change how they saw me, not who I was. So I kept my wealth a secret. Not even my best friend, Jada, knew the full number. As of last month, my investments hit $1.4 million. It doesn't make me better than anyone. I'm not flashy. I still buy used tools and wear the same coat I had 6 years ago. My truck has 230,000 miles and no plans to quit. But what I've built, I did it alone, step by step. Sometimes I wonder if I kept it hidden out of pride or self-preservation. Because if they didn't value me as Aaron the mechanic, they didn't deserve to know Aaron the investor. Let them think I'm the failure. They've never met the woman behind the work boots. 5 days after Thanksgiving, I was in my garage, halfway under a semi, swapping out a fuel pump when I heard a car pull up. Doors slammed. I wiped my hands on a rag, stepped into the chilly December air and stopped cold. There in my driveway stood my parents and Lily like they'd been summoned by regret. Dad looked uncomfortable in his neat jacket. Mom clutched a tin of blueberry scones like it was a shield. Lily looked furious. "Aaron," Mom called, her voice too bright, "we thought we'd swing by, see how you're doing." I crossed my arms, leaning against the garage. "See how I'm doing after uninviting me to Thanksgiving?" Lily stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "You should have told me, Aaron," I blinked. "Told you what?" "That Evan used to work for you." I stared, stunned. Evan, her boyfriend. The one I wasn't good enough to meet because I was too rough around the edges. "I didn't know it was the same Evan until yesterday," she snapped. "He came over for dinner again." I chipped my nail polish and made a joke about packing boxes. He laughed and said, "You'd never last a day working with your sister." My stomach knotted. "He told us everything," she went on, arms crossed. "How you gave him his first job at the yard. How you trained him from nothing. How you saved his job when he wrecked that customer's trailer. He said he wouldn't have a career without you." Mom's face was pale. Dad shifted awkwardly. "Then," Lily said, her voice shaking, "he told us about your investments. How you taught him to avoid chasing hot stocks and focus on steady growth. How you showed him your portfolio, Aaron." She was almost yelling now. "He said you've got over $1 million saved. And you never told us." I let the silence settle, heavy like exhaust fumes. "No," I said finally, "I didn't. Mom stepped closer, her voice small. We didn't know, honey. I looked at her, then at Lily. Would it have changed anything? Would I have been welcome if Evan hadn't said a word? They didn't answer. Dad cleared his throat. It's not about the money, Aaron, I laughed. Isn't it? Lily's eyes flashed, not with tears, but with embarrassment. You made me look like an idiot in front of him. That stung more than I expected. I didn't make you do anything, I said evenly. You chose to be ashamed of me before you even knew me. Mom glanced at the scone tin, then back at me. We came to say we're sorry, and we wanted to talk. She looked at Lily nervously. Evan's launching a business, something in auto parts logistics. He thinks you should reconnect, maybe partner up, combine your skills. There it was. The real reason, not regret, not family, opportunity. I let out a sharp breath and stepped back into the garage. You came to apologize, I said, but you brought a business pitch. Lily's jaw tightened. It's called building something, Aaron. You of all people should get that. I do, I said. That's why I built it without you. I turned, walked inside, and left them standing in the cold. I didn't sleep much that night. Even after they left, the air felt heavy like burnt oil. I sat at my kitchen table, the scone tin untouched. Outside, frost coated the windows. The next morning, around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. Lily. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Hey, she said softly when I picked up. Yesterday was a mess. I want to try again. I stayed quiet. I talked to Evan, she went on. He really thinks this business could work with you involved. Because of my money, I said flatly. Because of your expertise, she corrected quickly. And okay, the capital doesn't hurt, but he respects you, Aaron. He sees what I missed. She paused. I know we've never been tight, she said, but maybe this is a chance to fix that, to build something as sisters. Something in me clenched. For years, I'd wanted Lily to see me, not as the grimy, embarrassing sibling, but as someone who mattered. Now she was offering a way in, a place at the table I'd been barred from, but only now, only after the truth came out. Lily, I said slowly, do you even know what I do every day? She hesitated. You work on trucks. I troubleshoot wiring issues in rigs that weigh 20 tons. I overhaul fuel injection systems. I run a team of 8 and still get under the hood when it counts. Silence. I've built something, I went on, voice steady. Not just a bank account, a career, a home. I know, she whispered. That's why this matters. I stood by the window, staring at the snow-dusted yard. If I'd said yes to Thanksgiving before you knew about Evan, before the money, would I have been invited? No, she admitted. I was ashamed. And now, she didn't answer. Let me make this clear, I said, voice firm. I'm not buying my way into your approval. If you want to rebuild something real, it won't start with a business deal. Aaron, she said, frustrated, don't let pride ruin a good opportunity. This isn't pride, I replied. This is self-respect. Then I hung up. For a long time, I stood in the quiet, listening to the hum of the fridge and the soft groan of the heater kicking on. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. Just done. And that felt like peace. 2 days after Lily's call, Mom and Dad showed up again. No heads up, just the sound of tires on snow and a knock at my door. I opened it slowly, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. Mom wore her red coat. Dad stuffed his hands in his pockets, shifting uncomfortably. Hi, honey, Mom said softly. Can we come in? I let them in, not because I was ready, but because I was ready to end it. We sat in the living room on the same worn couch under the same lopsided lamp. The scarf I'd bought Mom sat in its gift bag on the table. She saw it but didn't comment. We want to start over, she said. We messed up, Aaron. Big time? Yeah, I said quietly. You did. Dad cleared his throat. We shouldn't have left you out. We didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to? I asked, holding his gaze. You told me Thanksgiving wasn't for failures. You just didn't expect me to stand up to it. They looked away. I need to be clear, I said. I'm not here to argue or be persuaded. Mom looked up. We're not here for money, I promise. Then why now? I cut in. Why only after you learned what I've built? Dad spoke up. We didn't know, Aaron. We didn't understand. And if Evan hadn't said anything, I asked, would you be here? Silence. I leaned forward, voice calm. I'm not ashamed of my work. I never was. The only thing I regret is letting your judgment make me feel small for so long. Mom's eyes welled up. We were trying to protect Lily's moment. We didn't mean to erase yours. But you did, I said, and I spent years giving, forgiving, waiting to be enough for you. I looked between them. That stops here. They froze. I'm not cutting you off, I added. But I'm done chasing your approval. I'm done auditioning for a spot at your table. Dad sighed. So what now? I stood, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. Now, I said, you decide if you can love me for who I am, not who you wanted me to be, but you do it from the other side of this door. Mom stood but didn't move. Her lips trembled like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I didn't fill the silence for her. For once, I let it do the talking. After a long moment, they stepped outside. I closed the door gently, not out of anger. Out of clarity. It's been nearly a year since that door shut. I haven't heard much from my parents since. A few holiday texts, a birthday card with a short note. Lily called once a month later. Said Evan had scrapped the startup. Said she wasn't sure what to do next. I wished her luck. I meant it, but I didn't let her back in. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. People started finding me, not the ones who'd ignored me, but new ones. Real ones. Young women from my old trade school reached out, asking how I grew my investments. A community center asked me to lead a budgeting workshop. I started saying yes, not for approval, but because I had something to share. Proof you don't need to be perfect to be powerful, that you can build wealth with a socket wrench and grease on your hands. One day, after a talk at the local garage, I found a note under my windshield wiper. It read, "Thanks for showing me worth isn't something you prove, it's something you own." I sat in my truck for a long time, holding that note. That evening, I stood in my backyard, watching the cherry trees I'd planted start to bloom. I'd always wanted a yard like this, small, simple, mine. A place where things could grow honestly. Jada, my best friend forever, pulled up in her rusty SUV with 2 coffees and a box of pastries. "Working again?" she teased. "Always," I grinned, brushing sawdust off my arms. We sat on the porch drinking coffee as the sun sank behind the houses. "Ever think about going back?" she asked softly. I knew what she meant. "No," I said, "not unless they see me without the $1,000,000. She nodded. "They probably won't." "I know." I looked at her, this person who never made me feel less, who saw me in work boots and thought, that's strength, not that's failure. "You know what?" I said, smiling. "I finally feel like I'm not trying to fix the wrong machine anymore." Jada laughed, tossing a pastry at me. "That's the most mechanic way I've ever heard someone say they found peace." She wasn't wrong. I wasn't fixing them anymore. I was building me. Not the version my parents wanted or the one Lily could show off, but the one who could rest easy at night. The one who chose self-worth over acceptance. As the stars appeared above, I whispered something I hadn't said out loud until then. "I am not a failure." And this time, I didn't need anyone to agree.